the word global can only be offset by recognizing what it means from a different perspective. So perhaps the antonym of global would be local. And what we're trying to see here is what makes something global and what makes something local. Is it something that can be demarcated through geography? Is it something we say, okay, till this point it is a local issue, and beyond this point it's a global issue? And we got to recognize that in between these two terms, local and global, we may have regional, we may have national, we may have continental, and so on. So many other definitions. So to me, from the perspective of leadership, I don't think we need to necessarily say leadership has to be different in a global context as compared to the local context. Because leadership is a universal phenomenon. And therefore, that universality lends itself to the fact that we should, if ever we were to look at leadership as a virtue, it must be a consistent, not be a different leader locally as against a different leader globally. So what kind of things would a leader's mind or leader's approach be influenced by? So here I have some few words such as mindset. So they are, again, these are my definitions, my understandings rather, and they may be different from yours, but in outlining them, what I'm trying to say is whatever deductions I have made come from these basic fundamental founding principles. To me, a mindset is more about a fixed point. Mindsets don't vary or change from time to time. Again, the opposite would be a perspective. We may have a perspective on something, and that perspective may change. On the other hand, a mindset informs our basic form of approaching any manifestation. Any phenomenon is approached through that mindset that informs us and that educates us, that makes us interact with that phenomenon. So why should a mindset be consistent? It is all about credibility. And one of the greatest qualities of a leader is to be credible. If we have a situation where we can approach something from one mindset in one context, in one locality, and have a conflicting or divergent mindset at another, that, especially in this world where every bit of information can be shared very quickly, that will lead to a complete destruction of our credibility. So we must be in a position to say, we must have clear values. It doesn't mean we need to have a stand on everything. Now that is another problem we often fall into, in that we feel we need to take a stand about every issue that impacts us on life. No, we have every right to be neutral. We have every right to say we are not sure. We are not informed enough to make a stand on this matter. However, where we do make a stand on, we are going to kind of understand the word values very soon. Where we make a stand, perhaps based on our values, we must be consistent. Then let's take the word innovation. So what is innovation? Innovation is learning through the process of experience and observation, of using things that are already there in new ways. Okay, that is in contrast to where we invent something, which is called invention. Invention is we are inventing a brand new concept, a manifestation, a phenomenon, or whatever. Compare that to innovation. It is where we learn to use something that is already there. It might not just be used to do something that we're already doing in a different way that perhaps is more equitable, more productive, and so on. So why is innovation important in a global and local sense? I always believe in the simple adage that the world the globe, the whole world is the world we can touch and see. Our world, due to social media and so on, has become very expansive. And yet, in real terms, the world that actually influences us, that impacts on our day-to-day living, is the world we live in, which we can touch, we can see, we can immerse ourselves in. And within that world, we'll be seeing things done in particular ways. And thanks to things like social media, without which we won't be meeting today, we can also see things that the same thing done differently. So if we are always alert to that potential of learning, we may be able to learn from the process of observation or discussion of doing things that we do right now in different ways. And this might work in both directions. We may be able to share our understanding of where things could be done with the outside world. And similarly, we could actually learn from the outside world about how things are done here. I just noticed a hand raised. Is there a question? I'm perfectly happy to take a question right now. No? Okay, fine. Do please feel free to interject. That's fine. And then comes the concept of talent. Now, talent is something that you may think, what has talent got to do with leadership other than the leader being talented? And that is one of the biggest mistakes we make. We are going to understand the word leader in the next slide. But a good leader must be always open to the concept of talent, because talent that is beyond that person, but is very related to the purpose of that leadership endeavor. And again, talent cannot be, we should never limit talent, be it, quite often we think of talent in human resource sense. We should never confine ourselves to say the talent must come from one particular region. Talent is a universal gift, if at all, and we must be always open to tapping on that talent from anywhere. And again, we must be aware that we may be able to lend the talents we have in our local community for global concepts. As Netmi said a few minutes ago, we have an organization called Mega Reach, and the whole idea was we identified particular innate talents of individuals, most often university students, looked at global manifestation of need and said, wow, this particular talent is particularly useful in addressing this need. And we matched that. And that was cross-cultural, cross-border. As your whole project implies, it was beyond borders. So we must not only be, always mindful of where talent manifests, but we must also be equally mindful of where that talent would be most useful. And then perhaps the most important one here is about diversity and inclusion. We often hear of the term diversity as implied in fighting for the rights of the isolated, the minorities, as it were. We hardly ever hear the term diversity in terms of the majority. But what we have to recognize is diversity where a particular group by itself is looked at and focused on by itself is just not diversity. It is certainly fighting for minority rights. It is the celebration of a particular group, if we were to call it, that is fine. But without complete inclusivity, that diversity to me as an individual is useless. And here, I understand that a majority of you are from the wonderful NSBM Green University. I have a very personal story to relate. So I work for the University of Plymouth. We are extremely proud of the association we have with the NSBM Green University, and the fact that we have years of connections has resulted in quite a lot of Sri Lankan students doing their postgraduate studies here. And I'm so glad I work for the Faculty of Health. which incidentally is the largest faculty here, but we didn't venture into Sri Lanka till 2 years ago. But from 2025, around June, we'll have our first graduate. So my hope is we'll be seeing postgraduates from the Faculty of Health here too. But even otherwise, even if you're not a member of the NSBM Green University, I have this very honest message to share, and it may prove controversial. So there are a lot of Sri Lankan students here. They are by no means the majority. We have a huge number of international students that have really embedded themselves in the local community. But when it comes to Sri Lankan students, and I say this purely because I identify myself primarily as a Sri Lankan, I see people in a spectrum, but there are two ends. On the one end, you do hear of Sri Lankans. They form Sri Lankan societies, and they do everything that is Sri Lankan and Sri Lankans only. I don't even attend those meetings, okay? Because to me, it is pointless to do that if especially we are living in a host nation, where we are living in a host community, to say this is just us and therefore we do this is actually a waste of time. There is nothing wrong in it. I'm not talking of any illegality here. I'm saying it is a total waste of time. On the other end of the spectrum, I see Sri Lankan students who work with the community, who work with the university, who get award after award, not just from the university, not just national awards, but international awards. I know of a Sri Lankan medical student who was invited to address the General Medical Council, the highest governing body of medicine, in his first year. Okay. And then you think, wow, how amazing is that? And the topic that this person was invited to address was not being a Sri Lankan medical student, but being a medical student in general. Now, if you're hoping to make a local impact, please get out of that mindset. That is why I'm talking of the mindset. And I'm really passionate about this, because I feel it is a shame that you're bringing students from an institution like the NSBM Green University, which is so forward thinking, to come here to create diaspora, little groups saying this is us and we are not going to interact with anyone else. If you want to make a global impact, you can't just talk to your local people and make a global impact. On the other hand, the word networks tells the split opposite of it. So even as we reach out globally, which means we are opening ourselves, we are going out of our comfort zone, but in the process, we are creating new avenues of making our message heard. Life is about finding a message and then fighting for that message to have that impact. And if we are going to do that, we cannot just talk to ourselves. So we need to create networks. But when we do, the opposite is we should not leave our roots. I have been in this country for 25 years. I can still speak Sinhala, which is my mother tongue, perfectly. I can sing any song that I learned from my parents and my schoolmates at any time in life. I have not forgotten my roots. I eat with my fingers. I sleep in a sarong. That doesn't make me any different or make me a patriot. It means I have my habits. I have my ways of living. But that will not prevent me from interacting with the far wider community that exists in Plymouth. And what does that do? It buys us influence. So what is influence? Influence can be many things. And your generation has introduced this concept of influencers, which really, we didn't name people as influencers because there were people who were globally influential, people like Mahatma Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, but they won that process. They won the ability to influence, to inspire the rest of the world by actually doing something worthy. But now, with I have no reason to criticize anyone. Now you can influence another person's life by doing far less. So if you were to really aspire for global leadership and you have the ability to influence, then find your message. The message that you find is so important. And the importance of a message is that your whole mindset, your value, the identification of talent, the ability to celebrate diversity through inclusion, create new networks, is based around that message. This is the time as young, blessed leaders. I was so happy to hear the list of schools there. I'm from Kandy, and I have friends in many of those schools that were mentioned, but of course there are other schools mentioned. But this, at a very tender age, you're thinking of global leadership, then find your message. And that message may change with time. That is fine. But as long as we keep our values at the core, which means we have a core set of values that defines how we approach any set of circumstances, then we are okay. So it is almost to say it is the reverse in which this works. We need to know what values we work for, and we cannot compromise on those values because it is those values that inform our mindset. So this is now a circle. Okay, we have a set of values that inform a mindset that allows us to find a message. And when we find the message, we are constantly looking for new ways of doing things which we may already be doing. It doesn't stop us from inventing new things, but we need to constantly change. We must be ready for change. And if we are going to manage change and inspire change, that must start within. And that then means that we need to develop networks, and within the networks, spot talent. And when we do that, we must be totally inclusive. We must never say, I'm only working for this group, or I'm only getting my talent or my resources from this group. You can do that. I'm not saying it is wrong, but then don't say you're aspiring to be a global leader. To be a global leader, you must be universal. Okay, and if I were to ever meet you, either in Sri Lanka, I do get the chance to come and visit your wonderful university at least once a year, or if you come to Plymouth, you must come and meet me, because there are students who are doing amazing things here, and quite a lot of them are Sri Lankans. Okay, and I would much rather work with those Sri Lankans than the other group whose only existence here is marked by celebration of Sri Lankan events. I won't be where I am today if I just committed myself to just work within the Sri Lankan community. I'm not talking about mannerisms here or anything. I'm talking within the wider context of global leadership. Right. So then we come to the question, who is a leader? And this is best analyzed by comparing it against a manager. So a leader, in a nutshell, is a person who inspires. A leader always leads a team. Whenever you talk of a leader, there is a team involved, and that team involves other humans. When we talk of managers, we don't talk of a team, we talk of a task that needs to be completed. So managers are very useful to be set tasks that they deliver. And that is a great thing. We need people to manage. We need people who are able to use the resources that are at their disposal to then deliver on things that we have defined. There is nothing wrong in that. But a leader, on the other hand, and the topic here we are discussing is global leadership, not global management, is a person who can get the best of the people who are in their teams. So there are people who, instead of giving directions, there are people who ask questions, because in the process of asking questions, they understand the team and the challenges the team faces in delivering the challenges. Okay, so they are, by nature, they are with the team, asking, and in the process asking, how are we going to do this together? And the moment we talk of working together, we create followers, not subordinates. When I left my school long time ago, on the final day, our principal made a speech. And I remember it took me a long time to understand the importance. But he said, learn to be a greatest attribute a leader could have in life is to be a follower. But he said, be a follower, but not be led. And he demarcated the difference. As a follower is a person who actively follows a leader, aware of alternative options, aware of the pitfalls. So if the leader was going in some direction with a follower, an active follower could always ask the leader, is this right? Could we take an alternative route? A person who's being led is being led passively. They will follow the leader on whatever they do. And managers create this. They do not want to be questioned. Instead, they want people to just do as they are told to. And that is their concept of power. And that they think is authority. A leader, on the other hand, works with the followers, not against the followers, but works with them and motivates them. A person who motivates a team gets far more loyalty from a team than a person who stamps down with authority. And please do remember, if ever, all of us in life are given managerial responsibilities. That is part and parcel of life. But when we get that, we need to ask ourselves, how are we going to achieve the objectives of this position, but be a leader in doing so? Because when we do that, we begin to understand how we can work with others, and then we begin to mold ourselves. So the beauty here is that we become better persons in the process of working with others, and they begin to realize this. And when people, when team members talk of their leaders that they actually love, that they follow, that they are motivated by, they say the leader, we follow the leader on what they do, not what they tell us to do. Look at the difference. The leader is already showing by modeling what they do, this is what I would love you to do. If you can, do it better. And that is where we begin to ask, can I do this better? Instead of just saying, do this in this way because that is the way it is done, that is the way my bosses want me to do it, so you bloody well do it. Instead, we come to that negotiation to say, can we do this better? And in the process of asking that question, we create change. We don't react. Change is inevitable. Okay, no matter who sets us tasks, the challenges that we face will change. Managers just react to those changes. Okay, whereas leaders act proactively and either create change or they foresee the change and they mitigate any detrimental circumstances associated with change. And in the process of doing so, they inspire people to become heroes. Whereas as far as a manager is concerned, he or she is the only hero. And the only form of authority they have is the exercise power. Sometimes, many of them, they deliver on the objectives that they are set to do, but in the process, they completely break the teams. And at the end, maybe the organization has achieved the objectives for that particular time, but that team is incapable of doing anything new. That team is incapable of moving another step. There's a beautiful story to illustrate this. You get these round-the-world yacht trip challenges. And the idea is people get into yachts. There are people who have no experience in that sport, but they are put together. They are put through a rigorous form of training, and then they are made to race against one another. And there was a race that ended up not too long ago. I'm sorry, I wish I could tell you the year. And the race was, at a knife edge. It ended up with one team winning after months of sailing by a few men. What was your experience? Will you race again? No one was willing to even think of working with each other. They absolutely hated each other. They had won the race, but they hated each other. The group that came second, when they were asked the same question, said, we are tired, give us a week, and we'll do the same round twice. That is what a leader is. A leader develops teams that looks beyond the immediate set of objectives. So here, you are all capable of becoming global leaders. But the only way we can set ourselves to lead the world is by setting ourselves to be worthy of that position to lead. So not only should we understand our values, should we understand consistency of our message, but then we need to understand the value of the people with whom we shall work to develop and deliver that message. It is only then that we can aspire to be leaders. So then what is culture? Culture, the so-called norms, the values, and so on, are really difficult concepts to define. In other words, people may have different definitions. But what I have in these two slides is to just demonstrate the magnitude of things that can come together to be labeled as culture. There are some things which are beyond us, like the geography and the climate, societal variables that we may not be able to impact on us directly. But then we have things like cultural norms and customs, for which we exercise a degree of choice. We may work within political, legal frameworks, but we have a choice as to what value we apply to a concept like gender, like ethnicity. We may have a choice in how we approach religion and spirituality. Do we come to a position where we say ours is the only religion that matters, or are we beginning to understand that religion, the faith, the need to be good, exists in many forms and has many labels, and we respect one another? And with that, we begin to understand the boundaries of our communities. The more small-minded we get, the smaller our community, because we can only exist within that system. So keep remembering that example about how some Sri Lankan students behave here against how the others behave. Do we need to work within a tiny community? Because I often meet students from not just Sri Lanka, from where, they say, because my name is Purna Gunasekara, which is bloody difficult for many people to pronounce. They call me PG. They say, PG, we feel safer within our community. So what are you saying? If you're only safe within your community, you're only going to live within that community. And that means your impact is going to be within that community. That is fine. Absolutely fine. There are people who decide to become monks of a particular faith at a tender age, and they develop that faith to the nth point, and that is fine. But that is not global leadership. So please, I'm not critiquing or criticizing lifestyles. I'm only looking at its value from the perspective of global leadership. If you are aspiring to be global leaders, your community has to be global. There is no other definition of a community unless if you are going to make a global impact. But even as we do this, we begin to realize that people may have certain values that they share, but the beliefs may be different and vice versa. So let's take us. I was told there'll be quite a number of us here today. I have no idea how many. But if I were to ask you, so, what kind of values do you have? You might say, we like to share things. We think everybody is equitable, which is different to equal. We want everybody to have an equal opportunity at life. We want to share what we have. And those are all amazingly universal values. And they build a sense of awareness, of fairness, that then becomes part of our personality. So if we are consistent in everything we do, that consistency becomes our personality. People will say, oh, this guy, this is what the person is. Okay, right. So we may, two of us may have the same set of values. But I, by virtue of being a Buddhist by birth, I may believe in rebirth. And my friend who is not a Buddhist may not believe in rebirth. That doesn't mean we are different. It's just that is how our judgment is informed. So if we are being culturally sensitive, we need to recognize that there will be people with not only different belief systems, but different values. And even where there are values, we must never make the mistake of stamping people with values based on what we have heard about a particular group of people, because that is called stereotyping. The danger of stereotyping is that it overlooks the fact that within any community, people are different. Okay, so let me give you an example. Here in England, every 10 years, we take a thing called census. When the census was taken in 2021, it's taken every 10 years and generally on the first year of a decade. The people who identify themselves as Caucasian, which is the word for white, either white British or white other, in the whole of the UK were 81.7%. In 2021, 81.7% were pure white, either British white or white other, from European countries and so on. Plymouth, where I've lived for 12 years now, the Caucasian population is 94.9%. Okay, imagine in England, it's 81.7, it's 94.9% here. So you would think, bloody hell, how am I going to survive? It's quite the contrary. The little bit of people, the color we have, is celebrated here. It is honestly celebrated. Okay, it is celebrated because the students, like I told you, are in the local community. They are doing amazing things with the local community, not within themselves. And this is what really hurts me, to see this recent input of Sri Lankans building small colonies. That will actually work against us. Because right now, when people talk of Sri Lankans, or for that matter, anybody, they talk of colleagues, they talk of people they can invite home who will be invited in turn. And please, that has to be the global purpose of our existence. Otherwise, don't come here. Just stay where you are. Okay. And I really am passionate about this. I know I'll be criticized for this, but I am willing to stand my ground. Why come here and sow division where unity exists? Okay. I can celebrate all my cultural events, but I do so with my friends, and my friends are universal. And there is another important lesson within this, because as we develop our personality, we begin to realize that our personality also is, as much as our values are constant, the priorities associated with us change. And these priorities were listed by a person called Abraham Maslow, I believe in 1942. They are known as Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And as you can see, what Maslow said was there are some basic needs that all of us have to fulfill before we keep going to this hierarchy. So we need to be able to breathe there. We need food, we need water to live, we need shelter, we need a place to sleep. It is only then we can think of safety and security in the form of things like employment, in family and so on. And then we talk of connections. We talk of forming family groups. We talk of committing ourselves to someone. We talk of a sense of connection. And then we begin to have that sense of meaning in our life that helps us to gain some confidence, that gives us a sense of achievement, that then leads to self-actualization. This was proposed 80 years ago. It still holds true. Okay, the order may differ. There are people with minimum psychological needs who still, in spite of all the limitations that are forced upon them, still self-actualize. But they are a real minority. If ever we are seeking to go anywhere, we need to develop this, live within this system and develop that. And for me, again, I keep coming to say, I'm not criticizing lifestyles. I'm only saying, if you are aspiring to be a global leader, please ensure that family is universal. That sense of security that you have, this is not limited to being confined to a tiny community that you identify yourself, but you are willing to spread. Because it is only then, I believe all of us are born with something, with the ability to self-actualize, to be the best we were ever destined to be. But in order to get there, we need to know that we have a place to live. We need to be healthy, not healthy in the sense of not being unwell. Ill health can exist in many forms, but to say our mind is working to an extent where we can have the confidence and a sense of achievement to create something new, to create and fight for moral causes, to be accepted by others, to have a sense of purpose in life. How amazing is that? And why shouldn't it be so? But even as we do so, remember, we are developing networks, reaching out to the wider world, never losing the roots that defined us in the first place. So to me, my journey that I have come so far is defined by these principles. I learned these as I went along that journey. It is not something as if I was prepared for all this and then I came to kind of launch a journey. Instead, I learned it the hard way. I made huge amount of mistakes, but each of those mistakes was a learning opportunity. But what gives me hope is that I'm seeing a new generation of young leaders. I'm seeing new generation of leaders from all over the world who are actually going through these steps way earlier and much faster pace than I ever had. And I think how lucky I am to know them, to really understand them. And it is leaders of that nature who gained me the opportunity of talking to you. So I'm extremely grateful of this privilege, the ability to express my thoughts to your forum. So now I want to leave you with two things that really changed my world. And these are two concepts. So, a concept is something like a collection of words that serve a particular meaning. And these are two concepts that I learned, which I hope some of you may know, but I would love you to understand it from the context that I relate to them. One is called emotional intelligence, and the other the Johari window. So, what is the relation? What is the importance of emotional intelligence to what we are talking? There is a wider concept. I haven't attributed an author to this because it is contentious. So some people talk of three criteria in the leadership quotient. Some talk of four. But the reason I put this is it acknowledges the fact that a leader is not just intelligent. Okay? And in fact, depending on the source you read, some people say intelligence per se amounts to about 5% of the net value. The real value of an emotional intelligent person, a leader, is emotional intelligence. And that allows them the operational leadership ability, their ability to understand the people. Remember, we said a manager has no understanding on the value of the people they lead. They work with. They don't lead. They work with them. They rule them, whereas a leader works and motivates them. And in a nutshell, this thing that I'm seeing, you can see on the right bottom part, is my understanding of it. Emotional intelligence is the constant awareness that every action has an impact. So on one hand, I must be aware that my actions impact on me. That is a basic understanding of self-awareness. We need to know how particular things we do impact on us, not only in a constant way, but in different contexts. I may do the same thing in different places, and the impact of it on me may differ. I need not only to understand what I'm doing and how it impacts, but I need crucially to understand how my actions impact on others. Because that my actions impacting on others is me now being the role model, me doing things in such a way that I can motivate others. On the other hand, we are so, they say no person is an island, and you certainly can't be a leader of one person. If we are ever aspiring to lead, we need to know how other people's actions impact on us. That awareness is critical, not only because we then can use that to motivate us, to inspire us, to do things new way, to do innovate things, but it can also guide us from harm. If we know this kind of thing is detrimental to me due to any reason, okay? And I'm not talking of good and bad here. We all bring emotional baggage with us, which is why we are focusing on emotion. We need to know the impact of other people's actions on us. And critically, we need to be constantly aware of what other people's actions impact on others. Because if we are leaders, we can't just say, okay, I'm only concerned about things that impact on me, or things that I do that impact on you, or things that you do that impact on me. I have no problem about what you do within yourself, between yourself. When I'm not part of the scenario, then you're not being a leader. We are not really caring for our team. We need to understand how other people's actions impact on others. And if we were to read the theory of emotional intelligence, these same 4 boxes, where there are 4 question marks there, are given these labels. The awareness of my actions on myself, impact of it is called social self-awareness. The awareness of my actions on others is called social awareness. Then you get self-management and relationship management. Look at that. We are talking about relationships. Managers don't form relationships. Leaders thrive on relationships. A leader is nobody if they don't have relationships. And the greatest leaders relate to everyone within their team. And their team may feel they are not just being led by the leader, they are leading the leader at times. And among the many things as we look here, look at the bottom left one called self-management. And then it comes to a point, it's called self-control, yeah, but also transparency and adaptability. Now, this is something that took me a long time to learn. What is the importance of transparency in leadership? Transparency is not something that is important only in leadership. It is something that is important in life. And that is a concept called Johari windows. What Johari windows talks of is transparency. It says in all our lives, every single one of us, we have 4 areas of awareness, of transparency. So there is one part that is called open, where we know this is what we are, and the others also know this is what we are. So that is our open part. Everybody knows this part of it. Then there is a part where others know about us, where qualities that others attribute to us that we have no idea about. And that's called a blind spot. Okay. People think of us, talk of us, work with us with the awareness about some of our qualities that we have no understanding of. And imagine that, people are already coming to us with some assumptions which we have no idea. So we may either reinforce those.
I don't need to hear this. I'm joining to make sure my name.
Okay. We may work in ways that reinforce those things, or we may work in contradiction. So imagine, quite often, the things that we don't know about ourselves are things that we would rather not know about ourselves. So if we are really going to be happy people, if we are going to, it's no point being a global leader if you can't hit the bed and sleep happily. If you can't wake up in the morning inspired, happy, what's the use of all the leadership responsibility? Okay, so we all have blind spots. We need to discover them. Then there is a part that we know about ourselves, which we don't want to tell anybody else. And that's perfectly okay. Okay, there may be personal details, either things that are so precious to us that we don't want the world to know, or things that are so painful to us that we would rather not, that others not know. So there is that hidden component about us, the part where we know about ourselves, but is hidden from others. And then there is this part which others don't know about us, neither do we know about us. So why did we talk of Johari windows? A leader in the process of becoming one tries to make that open area as large as possible, because in doing so, that person is better understood. That person is able to motivate more clearly. That person is receptive to feedback. That person is always open to new ideas because that person is open. So how do we grow that open area? So as you can see, we have to seek feedback. Okay, we have to seek feedback, not only from people who say yes to us, but people who are willing to say, can you do this better? My students have no problem in giving me feedback, and I really cherish that. I'm whatever I am because my students and colleagues have found it very easy, though it is painful to me. I'm not saying Oh my God, I have always been open to feedback, even though sometimes the feedback is very personal and sometimes hurtful. I have cherished that because it has helped me over the years to become a better person. The more I know of what others think I am, and therefore am able to moderate my way, the more I'm willing to share what others may not know about me. Okay, there is always a part that I will cherish. I don't share information about the people who I cherish most in my life. That is for me because they are not part of my global leadership package. But on the other hand, there are other things that I have gone through, things that are intensely painful that people do know about. I come from a poor family in Sri Lanka. I'm not ashamed to say this is where I come from. This is how I started. Okay. There is this story that I shared at a TEDx talk, and I want you to know. My father was an optician, and uh, I decided to become an eye surgeon because he worshipped eye surgeons. It it was a big thing. I was the eldest son, and I pursued that. I was not so clever. It took me a long time to get there, but finally, when I was selected to do eye surgery in Kandy, my hometown, under the greatest surgeon I have ever met in life, the late Dr. Christopher Reginald Seaman. There was only one vacancy to train under him. I had to pass an exam along with other doctors to be chosen, and I managed to get that place. And he said he knew my father because my father is an optician. And he said, bring Purna so that I can introduce him to my team. So here we go. At that time, I was working at Martale Hospital. I was doing general surgery. I was a senior house officer. And here I am getting an opportunity to go to the Center for Eye Health, brand new hospital in the beautiful hospital, Kandy General Hospital. So we go, and Dr. Seaman introduces us to layers and layers of people, and we keep going up. There were 4 or 5 stories in that building. And then right at the top was the operating theater. We always, operating theaters in purpose-built hospitals are in the topmost. It was in if you are asking me the year, it was about 1995, the month of May. Okay. So here I was we come to the top floor, and Dr. Seaman says, my father's name was Sujatha Dasa, but everybody knew him as Sugate. He said, Sugate, I invited you at this time because normally we strip to our underwear and we put layers upon layers of clothing. Because with eye surgery, you can't even take a speck of dust into a surgical theater. If that dust gets into the eye, that eye is gone. And we have positive pressure ventilation, which means as we walk into the theater, air blows out so that we don't even carry air particles in. Okay? But this day, the theater was closing. I believe it was a Friday or Sunday where we were, they would have a prolonged time to clean the theater. So all we had to do was just remove our shoes, put the boots, and they would put the overalls on us. We didn't have to strip to underwear, and we were taken in. I was so thrilled. My whole life, I had wanted to be an eye surgeon. I didn't even know you need to become a general doctor in order to become an eye surgeon. But here, after years and years of work, here I got the opportunity, not just to learn eye surgery, but learn it under the greatest surgeon, the surgeon who gave me a scholarship to come to this country, ultimately. Okay, right. So here I go in, I'm introduced to people, I'm completely over the moon, and I'm going back home with my dad. It's only then I remembered that I never saw my dad in that operation theater. My dad and I had spent many a night thinking what a typical eye theater would be, what a bespoke, a specialist eye theater would be. We had no idea what it looked like. And here, his opportunity to see one, and I couldn't see him. So I said, where were you? I didn't see you in that, when we were inside. And he was very reluctant to kind of discuss it. And then, I got angry. I actually got angry. And then he said, sorry, I didn't come because I would have insulted you. And I really got mad. I said, how the hell could you insult me? I was introduced as Sugate's son to everybody in the hospital. If you think that is an insult, why did you even come? I could have gone on my own as Purna Gunasekar. I'm proud to be your son, and I'm doing this for you. And then he said, Puta, if I remove my shoes, my socks have holes in them. Okay, so that is the kind of background I come from. I'm not shy about that. All my friends know that. My students know that. And it is a point that humility, the ability to say, this is what I am. And not all of you will be poor. I bet some of you are ridiculously rich. But there may be things that you are not happy to share. But there may be things in the process of sharing, you may become a better person. So please think about that. And in the process of okay, so in the process of sharing, what will happen is that unknown area of ours will become smaller and smaller, whereas the open area of ours becomes bigger. The reason I think Johari Windows is important is we must never seek leadership unless we are ready to be open. Okay, if we have too many skeletons in the cupboard, leadership is something that we should not aspire to because we will be found out. It is, especially in today's world, we will be found out. So please, it is not to say all of us have skeletons in the cupboard. But what I say is you are still young people. Try to make those skeletons as small as possible. Don't build things that you'll be ashamed of in the future. Instead, focus on things that you can be proud of. No, even if there are things that are not perfect, even if there are things of hardship, of sadness, of defeat, make them defeats from which we learn to listen rather than defeats because they were defeats because we tried to do something that was immoral. Okay, there is no shame in trying to do something good and failing. Absolutely no shame. The shame lies in trying to do what is against our values. So this is all a story that works together. And now you don't have to learn all this. The beauty of this is I was never taught all these lessons. We didn't have internet. Okay, I remember in 1999, I was given a Commonwealth Scholarship to come to the University College London, which is one of the best universities in the world. I didn't even know it was a top university. I remember telling a friend, it might be a college, that's fine. I'll do well and get into a university. Kandy had internet. Very few people had it. We didn't have internet at our home. We didn't even have internet in the Kandy Eye Hospital at that time. So you, on the other hand, can learn these things very, very early. And that means, and you are going to live longer than I shall ever live. And it is for you then to really begin to apply yourself. And then the biggest thing about a journey is the ability to communicate. Remember, if we are seeking to be leaders, we need to communicate because we are working with teams. And when it comes to communication, there is this important thing called the golden circles. Before we seek to communicate, I hope you can remember, I said, find your message. We need to know why we are doing something. Okay, it is only when we know why, our purpose, our motivation, our mission, what is our vision, why are we doing a particular thing, then we can go to understand the process. How do we get there? Because we are convinced our why is moral. We are convinced our why is within universal values. We are convinced our why is inclusive. It's not for just a few people to make the gaps that we already have in the world, the gaps of inequity and division greater. We are doing things to bring it together. Then we will understand how. And this comes through a process that is called the limbic brain. So within our brain, there is an arrangement. There is something called the neocortex, which actually is on the surface of the brain. It's a few millimeters thick. It's gray in color. The 6 layers of it. but that decides the rational stuff. It analyzes the senses that we get. It decides how we respond to those senses, and it initiates the response. All that happens on the surface of our brain, and that is called the neocortex. That is our rational part. But the passion, what keeps us going, what puts us to sleep and wake up, what defines our mood is all the limbic brain. They are tiny areas in comparison to the rest of the brain. They are very deep inside, but they are the ones that motivate us. Neocortex is beyond motivation. It is a machine. Okay. But that machine gets stimulated by the limbic brain. And therefore, when you find your message and learn to communicate it, always ask yourself why, which is what I did when I was invited to this. I asked, why are you asking me to speak? Which is why I thought I would rather tell you this, the path I went through, the lessons I learned, rather than say, I did this in this country, this in this country, and so on. Because that is not why you are here. You are here to learn something to carry with you to become a better person than I could ever be. And therefore, you yourself, when you find that, work through these golden circles, understand the why, the value, the purpose, the vision, and then you will be inspired to find the way of doing it. And that will lead to say, this is what we shall do. And that is what a leader does too. A leader appeals to the limbic cortex, the limbic part of the brain. A leader motivates people. A manager tells people what to do. I have had the great shame of working under managers, and I have suffered in the process. But I don't curse them. They are human. To me, the biggest thing they've given is the opportunity to observe them and learn to say, I will never be a manager in my life. I shall always lead. I might not achieve much. I might not achieve all the objectives that are set on me, but I will never let down a team that has entrusted their lives, their future on me. And that, if you do, you will, even if we do not become leaders who win Nobel Prizes, we will be leaders where people will be happy. So my message is simple. My plea to you is, if there is one thing, and this is encapsulated in this photo, always seek the uniqueness. Okay, don't seek differences. Differences and uniqueness may seem the same thing. It's quite different. When we are saying something is unique, it is a positive way of saying that uniqueness. I'm looking for something that is so special. And that special thing exists within us. And I'm not saying uniqueness in every person. I say uniqueness in every manifestation. Find the uniqueness of every day, every person that you encounter. And you will find, they will help to find our own uniqueness. They will expand our Johari window to say this, you are amazing, because they will give the type of feedback that will reaffirm us to be worthy of ourselves, because we can only grow through feedback that is positive. If we are constantly criticized, we will never grow, though we can learn from mistakes. If we are constantly criticized, there is no opportunity to learn from that, because we consider ourselves failures. We need to develop that confidence, and that development of confidence comes when we begin to recognize the value of others, because then they see you as a person who's willing to open your Johari window. And just like what this picture says, it doesn't mean the uniqueness is only in this particular flower. There are others about to bloom. So even as you're wandering in amazement of this one flower, you are aware that others are coming, and each one of them, and each petal within each one of them will be different. So that is my plea. When you have an amazing opportunity to do this, you're not going to spend time on a Saturday night in Sri Lanka listening to old Kodja speaking about his life, unless you are really serious about doing something amazing in your life. But also remember the fact that you have access to internet, the fact that you can understand English so that we can communicate, confers a degree of privilege. You're here because you have been blessed in life. Don't let that blessing go in vain. Seek to motivate yourself. And please, let's work together. I'm just one tiny cog in a massive wheel. We have global connections. We are doing amazing things. Okay, we are working towards a project that will seek to bring global peace on the 17th of November, 2039. Okay, 17th of November 2039. That is the day, that is 17th of November is celebrated every year as the International Day for the International Students Day. We remember Nazi stormtroopers storming Czech universities in Prague and elsewhere that led to thousands of deaths. We are saying on the 17th of November in 2039, people will stop killing each other. To get there is a mountain upon mountain upon mountain to climb. But we are doing little things every day. That means less people are being harmed with every passing day. We are working together with the world, with amazing people across the world. Become global leaders. And it is for you to lead this. It is not for you to follow. You can do this by working within yourself, within the community that you have. Connect to your local community with global values, and then build a global community where your local values and your local identity is celebrated. Then we can begin to change the world. Thanks so much. I'll stop sharing.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Purna. Now the platform is open for questions. Please go ahead. Please raise your hand if you do have a question, and we will give you the opportunity. Yes, Imad, go ahead.
Yeah. So, as Dr. Purna mentioned about leadership in a global situation, right? So, when you're being a global leader of such a type, then you'll have a community or organization, races, and stuff like that, right? So, a concern that I have is that how can these leaders, these global leaders, how can they overcome some cultural biases or stereotypes within that leaders organization in order to promote equality within the members of the team, community of organization, and to make sure that cultural biases do not occur.
Imad, I am very grateful to that question. It means you are genuinely interested about being a leader, and you have encountered a challenge that is widely acknowledged to be true. And it's right. The word bias is sometimes defined as a systematic error in human thing. In research, we call a bias, where it's not based on somebody making a conscious decision to not like one, where the system does not permit that way of thinking. And quite rightly, there are biases in our society where we are systematically made to think and work in certain ways that minimize the opportunities for us to thrive in the world. And remember, in the process of leading, we are not talking of surviving, we are talking of thriving. And this is where it is important for us to become more and more inclusive and more open. It takes a lot more courage. It takes a lot more courage to work out of our safe zones, but that is the only way. And that is why I kept stressing, the more we talk only among ourselves, the rest the world will know of who we really are. The real leaders of this world, take anybody that we talk of, they expose themselves to that. And it is only then that people begin to think, oh, maybe there's something different in this person compared to what we thought of in that group. And it is only then, it is like cracking a coconut. That is a analog that is often used. They say with coconuts, the shell is very difficult to crack, but once it is cracked, the fruit is very sweet. Similarly, we have so many prejudices. We have massive amounts of things, all of us, that we think that we attribute to others. And we do so because, one, we do not know them. We never get a chance to meet them. And all we often have is other people's opinions about them, because we never get an opportunity to meet them. And the idea then would be to put yourself out, to say, here I am. I will tell you about my values. My values and my customs may differ from yours, but we can learn of ways to work together. And that's what we do, women. We have a thing called a SWOT. SWOT is so what about this, SWAT. We get a person to deliver something that is new, something that is a global phenomenon that has local relevance. We get a local panel to discuss that phenomenon, and we get the community to discuss it instead with them. And at the end, we don't seek consensus. What we see is unity. There is a difference. Consensus would mean everybody's thinking alike. Unity is to say, we understand, we are agreeing to disagree on some things, but we will work together. And we need to do that. I'm so impressed by what Rotary and Interact is doing here. I mean, this is something I could have never dreamt of. And I'm not sure whether it even happens in England. But what I can say is, we can create Swatchats for you. And in the process of Swatchats, you can introduce concepts about, you can challenge prejudice. The word bias that you used. Prejudice is even worse because we imply certain social phenomena to our misinformation. And then say, in the process, say, this is what we are and what can we learn from each other. But we need to do that. We cannot expect other peoples to know who we are if we are not willing to be examined by other people. It takes courage, but it can be done. People we have written off in life sometimes come back and surprise us, saying, bloody hell, I had no idea you could do this. It's because they were willing to be examined. They were willing to be tested. And even if we fail in trying to work together, they will understand the richness of our individuality, the personality that we were talking of. And friendships that are forged through trial and error are the strongest friendships ever. So please, if you feel you are being constrained by prejudice, if you feel you are being isolated through systematic bias, take one step at a time every day, and I will work with you. Please, I told you, for me, global, local works together, and we will start talking about this, and we will create opportunities for people to really begin to recognize that there is so much we can learn from one another. It's called mutual empowerment. Please do that. And thanks for raising that. I'm amazed that for two things, that you had the courage to do so, because your name is there. You're not doing it, in an anonymous manner. And you raise something that is absolutely pertinent to this issue. But also remember this in mind. So I am a singular Buddhist. I was the majority in Sri Lanka. I never encountered these biases. Most of the time, I'm the sort of person who perpetuated the bias. But then I come to this country, I'm a distinct minority. And I'm a minority in one of the most least diverse places in in England, but I am among the happiest people. I can honestly say that, because every time I open myself, I made huge mistakes. I suffered massive personal failures and pains. But with each failure, I gained more confidence to try again. And these days, we are doing things that others would not even dream of trying, implement. We are doing absolutely crazy things. I hope you'll end up here one day. That kind of person requires to be nurtured. And thanks for asking that question.
Are there any more
Thank you, Dr.
Ayodhi wants to. Okay, thanks. I'm so grateful you're all asking questions. I think Ayodhi, you'll have to mute yourself first. Ayodhi, sorry.
All right, thank you, sir. So when talking about the present state of Sri Lanka, the majority of people say that it is the fault of the leaders that put our country in a state like this. So what are your thoughts on this matter? And if we are to overcome this obstacle, what are the changes we should make as an individual of the society and as a leader?
You know, I'm so glad we are taping this, because I want people all over the world to hear these questions. The clarity of thought and the way you ask it, because you used very pleasant language. That's one of the things. Remember, when we embark on that journey, communication is key. And the way you communicated there is fantastic. All I say is they are leaders because we appointed them. Okay. So we all make these, we appoint leaders because we expect them to lead. And leadership and politics are two different things. What I would suggest is become a leader of yourself, form your own leadership team, and start working day by day towards change. Because corruption and poor governance are universal phenomena. It's not just limited to Sri Lanka. The problem we do is we think the only way we can become leaders is to sign up to that particular pathway. Okay. We don't need to sign up to that pathway. We don't need to become politically active or become members of political parties. There's nothing wrong in that. But we can become leaders in our own right. We can become civil leaders. And if anything, what technology has given us is the ability to have a global impact without having any resources, any party. I'll tell you, Mega Reach. When Mega Reach was formed, it was formed in 2015. By 2018, we ran projects in 5 continents without raising a single penny as money. We were able to tap on that thing of resource and need and work together. I remember in Sri Lanka, there was a girl from Jaffna who, at the age of 13, was detected to have congenital heart disease. And she was 25 when we got to know about her. And this story is really important to me because it is relevant to what happened today. For 12 long years, she had had no surgery. And initially, her problem was one valve. So we got to know about her. And we said, let's do something. We spoke to a team of cardiologists in Jaffna, a superb cardiothoracic surgeon in Colombo, and we worked together. They diagnosed by then 3 of the valves were impacted, 3 of the valves. The cardiothoracic surgeon in Colombo operated free of charge. And that girl had 2 valves replaced and 1 repair. And I know subsequently that girl even got married. You know why that story is important? That doctor who performed it is called Mahendra Munasinghe, one of the best surgeons I know. Today, he conducted a surgery on a very close friend of mine who everybody else refused to do surgery. I didn't sleep last night because this friend was so important. But now we know he's safe. So life has a beautiful way of rewarding. Okay, so please don't feel you are anyway obligated or bound by the mistakes of others, that you need to repeat them in order to validate yourself as a leader. Create your own path. And, it is organized opportunities like this that create actual leaders, people who can change the world. And when you do so, don't spend time criticizing others, because it is a waste. We can criticize the leaders of Sri Lanka for all we want. They're not going to change. It's not going to have any impact on them. Use that energy to motivate yourself and your team to do things the way they could never ever do. Then the change will happen. Thanks,
Thank you, sir.
I think Gavit.
Uh, excuse me, before moving on
Yeah.
to Gavin's question, I just have a small announcement.
Yeah.
This announcement goes to all the participants. Please ensure to mark your attendance. The attendance link is in the chat. Thank you. You can have the platform, Gavin.
So in terms of leadership, how do you understand and get to know your limitations, and how do you overcome your limitations, and how do you know what are your limitations are?
Wow, that's a very humble question. That is amazing. We can only understand our limitations, but by testing our limits. Okay, so that is to say, we have to go beyond the comfort zone, which is what we were talking about from the first time. If we only operate within the area we are comfortable, we are not testing our limits. So the only way we can learn our limits is to do things and identify where things go wrong, and then understand what can we do to correct them. And there are two ways to correct it. Because I'm in the medical field, we have two approaches to this. One is to identify a limit and say, this is something where we are not good, and we try to learn and become better. On the other hand, we also try to identify people who could do what I am trying to do 100 times better. And then it is the idea of using that expertise, developing that team to say, will you help me do a better job with this? I can't do it myself. So I would say, have the courage to go beyond your zone. And when you do so, be constantly reflective. So there was that in that slide, I didn't take enough time. When you're on your journey, communicate your journey, apply your learning. Okay. And in the process of applying, we will learn. And that learning comes through reflection. When we look back, we often learn more from things where things went wrong than when things went right. So don't be afraid to make mistakes. And that is the beauty of fora of this nature. You know, when we create these opportunities, global opportunities, we work within zones where even if a mistake is made, that is not catastrophic. But instead, every time we make a mistake, we are able to reflect and learn. And remember, there are two elements of reflection. One is called reflecting in action. The other is called reflecting on action. Reflecting on action is something we often do, where we have done something, we look back, think about it, and say, okay, the next time we do this, we will make a difference. In reflection, it is not just an analysis of the past, but a preparation for the future to say, we are going to make a difference the next time we do it. So there is always that cyclical phenomenon there. But reflecting in action is being constantly mindful of doing things as we do, and constantly asking ourselves, is this the best we could do? Could we do it better? And in the process, the beauty, Nadir, is this. You will begin to find the talent of others. So our limitations should not be informed by our personal limitations, but rather our limitations would be in the lack of the network in order for us to be effective. Okay, for us to be totally effective, we must become a tiny cog in a massive wheel, not the other way about. If we think we are the person who's responsible for everything, our impact will be very much smaller. So please, so it's a matter of reflecting, identifying, discussing, seeking feedback, and saying, how could we do this better? Doing it again. We may make a mistake the second time, the third time, and so on. Maybe we say we will never try. You know, there are things that I would never try in any format, because I just feel we don't have the resources, the capacity, or the talent to do that, or the resilience to take the blows that come. On the other hand, they help us find our strengths that we may not be aware of, those unknown areas in the Johari window. So thank you for asking that. You are all of those who ask these questions, you all are destined for great things, because I am saying this not to praise you. I am placing myself as a student 40 years ago. I would never have even thought of the way you do. And this is the advance you all have made, because your minds are progressing, are learning at a far faster rate. And don't be afraid to make mistakes. Never. And be honest when you make a mistake. One thing I learned, and this is a story I want to share. I learned it from a pastor, a person from Salvation Army. I went to one of their meetings, and I have only one child. She's a daughter, amazing young lady. I had a fight with her, and then during this meeting, and I went to the meeting because I follow many faiths, and at that time there was this opportunity for us to talk about ourselves. And I said this, I'm not in a nice place. I'm very sad. My daughter is the only child I have, and I had a big fight. So they prayed, and this pastor came to drop me. As he was dropping me, he asked, "Can I give you a bit of advice?" And I said, "Please do." He said, "Are you going to say sorry?" I said, "Yes, I know it's my mistake. I'm going to say sorry." Then he said, "Just say sorry. You don't have to say sorry, but this is the reason I did what I did." Okay, that is almost qualifying your apology. We don't need to. When you say sorry, when we have tried something and when we have made a mistake, just say I'm sorry. And that's better than anything else. But I really, really hope you guys, I'm coming to Sri Lanka in the not too distant future. I'll let your the organizing team know. I would love to meet you people in person, because this is amazing. These are not questions I would have expected from you, from myself. And I work with students all the time here. I don't hear these questions from here either. So I'm very proud of you.
Nadev.
Yeah, thank you for giving me the chance. Sir, as you described, there's a huge difference between being a manager and a lead. So, being a manager is simply just pursuing the goals and achieving it regardless of the team members you have. But being a leader causes us to take care of all the members in our team as well. But as a leader, when managing a team, the problems regarding the racial and biocultural issues occur, right? As a leader, how can we face these issues?
Nadev, racial and what, Putta? Racial and?
Biocultural.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So amazing. This is incredibly mature, because it shows we are not only reflecting on real circumstances, but we are saying things that are actually prevalent in our society. That is where we begin to understand, when building teams, sometimes you cannot be everything to everybody. Okay. When you meet anything that is with prejudice, whether it's bigotry, whether it's race, whether it's gender identity, and so on, don't reject a person whose views may be different to yours. Try to understand the reason for it. Okay. And sometimes that will teach us a lot about the person and where they come from. And when you do that, then try to explain and discuss. It has to be a discussion about the importance of being truly inclusive, and the importance of being truly honest, and giving everybody an equal opportunity for the wider benefit. Because if I was carrying, say, some kind of racial hatred towards another, and you were my leader, and because of my attitude, you couldn't bring the team together. By giving me a chance to say, this is why I am carrying this, you're already saying to me, I matter. And by saying, this is why I need you in order to reach this goal, you're saying you still matter. And then you are saying, this is the benefit of that goal, reaching that goal to all of us. Because we are not just going to reach that goal. When leaders are given tasks, sometimes they understand the resources and the challenges so well, they negotiate the end task. They say, this is not possible with these resources in this time frame. Let us do this instead. But in getting there, if we were to get from A to C, we first need to get to B in order to get to C. And if we were to do that, you are building a team that will begin to understand that. And often, when we are given an opportunity to face ourselves, when a mirror is kept in front of us, instead of blame, fingers being pointed to us, one-to-one chat and say, this is where we are. And I understand there must be a reason for you to think like this, but please work the other way and work together. You may then find in the process, you begin to understand the other person as well. Because Sri Lanka is an island, the amount of divisions it has is crazy. There are far more things that we can find to divide us than unite us if we spend time finding them. The greater thing is to understand the individual. So my plea, that is why I said, when we set out to lead, find the uniqueness of every team member. And when finding that uniqueness, you will find in that uniqueness, because we are all human, are unique problems as well. And then we discuss them openly, because they will help us to find our unique problems. Okay, I was a terrible racist. I've served in the Sri Lankan army as a volunteer doctor. I was a terrible racist. And my greatest redemption was in 2015, when I took a group of medical students, 2 of whom were students whose parents had fled Sri Lanka due to the violence. And we were able to go and stay in Nainativu or Nagadeep. The community greeted us, and I told them about my prejudice. And I said, I'm sorry. Those girls didn't reject me because of my past. They gave me a chance to look at myself and become a better person. So don't reject people instinctively. Try to understand their root causes, because all of us carry prejudices. But in the process of doing so, know that you are not upholding their viewpoint, but rather trying to understand it, and then create that team identity, which makes us then appreciate the value of every person. It can be done. It requires resilience. And teams that are easily made are teams that will easily break. The harder you have to work to bring a team together, the better that team will be, the longer it will last.
Right. Thank you,
Thank you,
Doctor.
sir.
Yeah. We have 2 more questions. Interactor Anna.
Yes. So this question is kind of related to most of it is interact basically. So when we're doing projects and whatnot, we try our best to cause a greater cause to the community, right? But then whilst we're doing that, from the community itself, a lot of people demotivate us with a lot of negative comments with it, right? And so along with that comes hardships in managing the team to getting the work done, because all of them become demotivated along with the leaders as well. So what can we do about that?
You all are at your tender ages, you're already running projects. We didn't even talk about projects at your age. So well done, Amma. I'm very, very proud. And I noticed 2 names. So before I answer, I'm going to, I noticed the name of Sumalka Mendes and Utsara Disanayaka. Both these people are based in Plymouth. Sumalka originated from NSBM, and to my knowledge is the only PhD. She's soon getting her PhD. She's already a member of our staff. And that, I believe, and Utsara didn't come through the NSBM. He's a Trinitarian. He came directly to Plymouth. But both of them won awards at the university. And those awards were so special because they were nominated by the students themselves, not the staff. And I think the point that you made is directly relevant to the projects that they do. So there are 2 things here. When we formulate projects, we have to ensure that the project formulation phase includes the very community we work with. Okay, and one of the things we learned very early through Mega Reach was we had the best intentions. We always wanted to do good, but our good was not perceived as important or perfect by the community. And the only reason that was because we had not involved them from the beginning. So when it comes to formulating a question, a problem that needs a solution, let the community be part and parcel of the identification process. That now, in our way, is a must. So for all of you, if you want to develop a future professionally, especially academically, you need to publish. Okay, and publications are very, in peer-reviewed top quality journals, are very expensive affairs. They cost about $2,500 US. We have launched a program whereby you can publish in peer-reviewed ranked journals free of charge, because the University of Plymouth is paying for the royalty fee. Please contact me who would like that. And what we are looking at is not medical research or anything. They are called community science. So it is very linked to what you say, Amma. Community science is working with community. It's a methodology where we work with the community to understand community's perspective of problems, recognize the resource implications, both locally and in the wider community, and work together to solve it in a sustainable way. And quite often, the solutions we come up with are completely different to what we would have come up with if we did it on our own without the impact of the community. So that's the first thing. But the second thing, we cannot detract from the fact that you are doing this through the wellness of your heart. And when people don't react, think of the Maslow's hierarchy. Okay, things like enabling ourselves to be better people, building our values, cultural pursuits, things that make us more human or different from the animal kingdom, are pursuits that can only be undertaken when our basic needs like food, air, water, shelter is met. Even us, think of us during exam days. We drop everything else and do the exam. But we do so because those basics like food, water, shelter is guaranteed. So we don't have to let go of the ideals in order to pursue basic living requirements without which we cannot live. When we work with communities, often they are not problems that can't be solved in one day. One of my earliest lessons I learned in life was when we were medical students, there was a time that the universities closed. There was a period of 3-4 years, I think in the 1986, 87 time, when the universities were closed due to civil unrest. So at that time, there was a place called Liberty Plaza. I don't know whether it's still there. It was the poshest shopping mall. I got a job there as an optical assistant in Albert Idrisinger's amazing opticians. I come from that family. So here I was working, and there was a kid who was selling joss sticks. Okay, joss sticks to every shop in Liberty Plaza. And instead of going to school, so I asked, why are you not going to school? And he said, I'm doing this in order to collect money to buy books and a chair and a desk, because my school will not accept me if I don't bring a chair and a desk and this set of books. Okay. Now, we had a group of students then. We were all jobless, but we collected money, bought the desk, bought the chair, bought the book list, gave this guy. He stopped coming to Liberty Plaza. But a few weeks later, I found him selling joss sticks on another place. I was fuming. He said, you bastard, you cheated, everything under the sun. It is only then that an elder told me, son, this guy is doing this to feed the family. He has another brother and another sister who are doing the same thing. The mother has no way of earning. And if they don't bring money, they don't live. So just because you give a chair and a desk and a set of books, that doesn't mean for the rest of their lives they'll get food free. So when you do something, try to find what is driving them first, and what you do then will be 100 times more impactful. I still remember him saying, what you did is nothing wrong, because they were able to sell that and buy food for about a week or two, when normally they get food for by a day-to-day basis. So please continue to do what you do, but ask the community what they need before we find a solution to the problem that we perceive. And get ready to get your fingers burned, because human nature is such, the more you do, the more you will be blamed. But if your motivation is right, if you know this is all I can do and I'm doing that to the best of my ability, you will never suffer because you are doing what you can do. That's a wonderful question, and thanks for doing these things.
The
Thank you, sir.
final question, interactor Isrini.
Sir, how can leaders adjust their leadership style to effectively support and manage a team comprised of individuals with diverse backgrounds and perspectives?
It's a beautiful question, Isrini, because you're already saying a leader needs to adjust. In other words, a leader is not perfect. A manager will never ask that question. Okay, you're already saying a leader needs to be flexible, to be adaptable. We have our mindset, remember? We have the proper mindset, but we need to have different perspectives. The way to do that is to value, in my way, in my own personal experience. I work with teams across. I don't lead every team I work in, but I work with teams across. So just to give you put that in context, I teach medicine only 50% of the time. 50% I work to enhance our global footprint. So I get to travel. That is how I get to travel to Sri Lanka. I, of course, come home on personal visits, but I come to NSBM Green University. I get to go to quite a lot of countries where people work in different styles, different time zones, different sets of values, different communication styles. In everyone, there is one thing I always do. I ensure that they know me. My Johari window is as big as possible. They know me, they know my mannerisms, they know my values, they know my limitations. The first question that was asked, beyond this, I'm not willing to risk working. As far as this is concerned, I shall be very happy to work with you. And when we do that, we begin to find people. You are so right. A good team must be diverse. It's pointless having a team of similar people. Then it's not a team. A team, by definition, should have experts in different fields. And we should never, as a leader, try to be an expert of every field. For that matter, the only field we need to be an expert in is the field of leadership. We may be doing a task about which we have very little skill set to do the task. But if we can value our world and come together, then we begin to see that talent. We begin to innovate, do things in different ways. Every one of those words in those slides meant things. Those are not words I have invented, by the way. These are words that I have found in leadership for fora all over the world. So when we do that, it becomes a celebration of diversity. Well done, Isurini. Okay. I still remember, I love these anecdotes. So I come to this country, I was studying, and I got my first job in a further education place to teach. Further education, I don't know whether it exists in Sri Lanka. It's where, not like you go from A-levels to university, you bypass that scheme and you take different set of qualifications, like vocational qualifications, and they're wonderful, and they then enter the university. So it's between normal high school and the hierarchically between higher education. So you get this further education. And there was this amazing friend. I went to an area where I was the only dark person. I had no bloody clue how to even live. I was living in temporary accommodation, and he was so helpful. And one day I was working on the desk, and at that time we were sharing an office, a large office. There were about 10 of us. And this is a towering guy. His name is Bill Horrock. And Bill comes to me, and he has a billowing voice, and he says, Purna. I say, yes. Diversity should not be tolerated. And I was thinking, what the bloody hell? What have I done to you? I have been nothing but nice. I have been a good team player. Why the hell should you come and shout such a such a demoralizing thing to my face. And everybody in the office stopped working. Okay. And they were even, because Bill is a nice guy. And everybody thought, why is he having a go at me? Then he said, it must always be celebrated, and people were laughing. So remember that. It's something I always remember. I don't tolerate diversity, I celebrate it. And the way to celebrate is to seek that uniqueness within every individual. And then the difference is not a problem, but actually a solution. It is not a negative thing, it is an advantage to say, you are so different to me. And that is how it works. It works in real sense. Remember, we all come from different religions. We have different religious hospital times. Imagine how the hospitals are staffed during religious holidays. If every one of us were to take leave, the hospitals have to shut. And that's the truth in any form of life. We work to different values, different timetables, but we work for a common vision and therefore share. And when you do, well done for that question. Don't seek diversity as a problem. Seek diversity as something you are actively seeking a talent to celebrate. And you'll find it's a transformative experience. Utsara and Sumalka will tell you, Plymouth, you must come to Plymouth. When we walk the road, we find people coming up and just talking. And it's such a beautiful thing. It's not because we are great, because they identify with us as people they can trust, because we are different, not because we are the same. So get to that point. And I'm so grateful for this. I thought you all will not ask questions, and you may have reservations. You may oppose some of the things I said, especially about creating Sri Lankan diaspora in Plymouth and so on. But please talk with me. I put my email address at the bottom. I'm coming to Sri Lanka often. We are doing these amazing events where you can become globally renowned leaders right now. Okay, working towards that program where we are working towards global peace is called Colors for Scholars. Some of you may have held a thing called Colors for Scholars on the 17th of November last year. It has become a big project, and we are doing projects through Colors for Scholars. We are doing it on a weekly basis, and that gets global recognition. Let's work towards that. And I would be thrilled to work with you, because I know my days are limited. But if I can inspire your generation, based on the questions you asked, I'm amazed at you. I know my days would have been well spent if I can inspire you all to be the best you are. That's all. Not what I want you to be, but the best you could be.
Just to add to that, PG, so I can see a lot of Rotaractors has joined it, and just to say that Rotaract Club was the first activity club at NSBM, and I was a part of the first committee as well. So when we started projects and when we started doing things at NSBM, there was obviously a lot of people who didn't want us to do things, or we had a lot of negative backlash that came as well, because we were the only people who were doing this, and it was quite new, and NSBM didn't have any society or anything at that point in time. We were the first people to sort of initiate an activity club back when we were in Nugegoda. And I think now we have grown from that, and it is really nice and amazing to see the fellow Rotaractors and all of you guys, all the activity clubs working together to do things like this and taking that sort of forward. As someone who was part of the very first committee, and then I sort of stayed in for my next few years as well. So it makes me feel really nostalgic and very proud of all the things that you guys have achieved so far. So just to add to that.
Yes. When was it, Sumalka? When did you all form your first Rotaract club?
I think this was sometime in 2014, 2013, when we just started when we just started our sort of like, so I was a part of the second Plymouth batch in NSBM. So just when Plymouth was already our partnership was also quite new, but it wasn't just from like the students who were doing the University of Plymouth degree programs. It was the UGC, the doubling. So we all got together and we created sort of like this initiative. So Adisha was the guy who sort of took this initiative, and he was very persuasive about creating this Rotaract club, and he was the very first president, followed by my friend Mayuka, who took over from Amma, who took over from him, and then my friend Mayuka. So I was a part of all of their sort of committees, which was a really great thing. So it's really nice to be a part of this event today.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. That's really inspirational. It shows, and I can tell you honestly, Sumalka, Utsara, and there are many more, Shahani, Kalum. These are students who are winning regional and national awards, not just Plymouth awards. And they are winning it not for fighting for Sri Lankan causes, they are fighting global causes. And it makes me so ridiculously proud. And I know everyone here is intensely capable of getting there. And the beauty is your path has already been charted now. But you walk with your own mission within that path. What you produce will be still as unique as anybody else's. So thank you so much for this opportunity. And I'm absolutely humbled and I'm so grateful.
Right, thank you. So to end today's session, I would firstly like to thank our guest speaker, Dr. Purna Gunasekara. A very special thanks to you, because I know that you have a very busy schedule and you've taken out time to share this experience with us, to share the knowledge with us. I think a lot of us here were truly inspired today, and we have a lot of thoughts going in our heads right now. We will be it will be full for a while, in my opinion. At least mine will. Also, I would like to thank all the Interact clubs who collaborated with us for this project, and also all the participants who actually came for today's event. I mean, without y'all, our event wouldn't be a success. And you all were actively participating too, by asking questions. So we really like to thank you all for that. And finally, but never the least, a very special thanks to our MICs and our lecturers in helping making this event a success. I hope you all enjoy and have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
See ya. Bye.